As a sales rep, you can't be so desperate because once you're so desperate, the prospect feels it. There's this difference between scarcity and abundance. And abundance mindset, yes, you know about it, but can you do it effectively? Do you know how to really think with an abundant mindset, and how does that behave and how does that transform? Today, we're going to talk exactly just about that. Check it out. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on today's episode, I have the one and only Scott Ramey. And Scott's going to tell us about this concept. Scott has ran many different organizations. I love his mission. Like, check this out. He has raised billions, thousands led, one mission: helping sales and business leaders build trust, inspire action, and drive results. So not only is he coming to this conversation with somebody that's done it, but he's coming with it that he's done it with other organization and helped them. So he has a track record, which is powerful. But the most important component about this is that Scott has found out and realized something critical throughout this whole process. It's not just the seller, it's the leaders that need to change the way that they think. And as we dive into the episode, you'll get a chance to see how this translates in the conversation. We're not just harping on the seller, but the sales leader, and how we can collectively as an organization fix this issue and not be so desperate. Scarcity versus abundance. If this is your first time listening to our podcast, know that every episode we're going to dive into a topic like this that helps you to, one, either build pipe, or two, help you to close deals a little bit faster. As we go into this conversation, we're going to go straight into the problem and issue and what you can do to come with an abundance mindset. Check it out. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Donald. It's great to see you. Appreciate it.
Same to you. I'm looking forward to this conversation. And I talked you up a lot in the teaser because this piece, this idea of scarcity versus abundance, or abundance versus scarcity, whatever you look at it, like I think it's a real issue. And especially as sales reps, I've been in that part where you have a bunch in your pipeline and you're good. But then when it comes to that commission breath, when nothing is in the pipeline, you stink, and you just the scarcity idea. But when it comes to the performance, how we do this as a seller, it's important because, yes, we want our buyers to make decisions, but it's important for us to understand this. So I want to take a deep dive into this conversation. I bragged about you a little bit in the teaser and all that you do, and everyone is expecting the amazing thing from Scott now. So Scott, here we go.
Good. I love it. I love the expectations.
But let's talk about the problem, though. Like, why is this such a critical? Why is it this conversation warrant to have when it comes to talking to salespeople?
Around scarcity versus abundance. Look, I think it's the law of vibration. What we bring into the conversation can be felt, certainly can be heard. And, I think that we sometimes underestimate the power of the emotion and energy we bring into a conversation. So I think of, like, as a sales leader, salesperson, authentic interest is really important. We hear a lot about authenticity, and I like the word, and now it seems to be kind of overused and cliche. But everything that we bring into a conversation is based on the law of vibration, the energy. It resonates and it vibrates. Emotions, certainly actions, all of it is vibration. So if we bring in a desperation into a conversation, or if we feel like this, at the end of, we're now into the second quarter, first quarter didn't go like we thought it would go, we bring that energy with us into the conversation, knowingly or unknowingly, we're emoting that energy to the person on the other side of the conversation, and they're feeling it. And so the idea is we want to have a positive vibration of not of desperation or scarcity or pressure, but one of openness and honest and authentically connecting to people. And that's what I've seen shift in conversations. Like the really elite people that can consistently maintain that positive vibration, that positive energy, have great success. I mean, the 80-20 rule exists for a reason. And so I think we got to get to a higher level of perspective. Like, what am I bringing into the conversation? Am I emoting energies and emotion and a vibration that's less than productive? Have I stripped myself of all considerations before I walked into that conversation? Am I open, and are they open? And are we operating at the same level? I think Donald, it's so discounted in terms of what, the awareness that we bring into a conversation.
What might that look like for me as a salesperson? if
What would
I'm
it look like?
yeah, if I'm coming into like you're my sales, I'm coming into or if you're observing me, what might that look like if I'm bringing the wrong vibrations into the conversation?
There's a lot of symptoms, but let me just give you a few. Well, so anxiousness or nervousness, especially if you have someone traveling with you, which is obviously from a coaching standpoint. Sometimes we travel with people and they watch us, and so if I'm anxious, if I'm concerned about what other people are thinking of me, how I'm being portrayed, if I've had a bad morning or a bad day or a bad week or a bad year, and I happen to bring that baggage, quote unquote, with me, kind of knowingly or unknowingly, versus somebody who's perfectly clear and accepting that moment as if it's just that moment in time, that one time, because you're never going to get that moment again.
Hmm.
You'll have another chance, but you're not going to have that moment again. You're light, you feel open, you feel like no pressure to quote unquote close or pitch or convert. I'm just in the moment, enjoying being in that moment and connecting with that person at a level of service and value. It's amazing what happens when that occurs.
We talked based on several points
Mhm.
about how desperation drives scarcity. Do you mind going into that a little bit more for me?
Yeah, well, what it so desperation. So I think of like desperation and tension.
Mm.
So my own personal journey and example of this, and what I've seen freeing for myself and my journey is originated in my first panic attack when I was 19 years of age, and continued literally until about 2 years ago when I, for the first time, shared with someone other than my wife that I had anxiety my entire life. A corporate executive leader, sales. I've had great success and privilege in my life in terms of what that experience is, what my skill and my ability has presented itself. But it wasn't until I actually shared with my oldest daughter, Aubrey, that I had anxiety my entire life 2 years ago, where I felt like that pressure was completely relieved from me.
Mm.
And I think what happens to a lot of us is that we tend to carry the day to day burden on our shoulders as if we're carrying a large piano. I think about what's happening in college sports right now, for example, with the name, image, and likeness, and they're receiving all this money
Yeah.
for that. These young people have so much that they're carrying, even more so than they would carry before. And so I think I don't know if I'm on a mission, Donald, but maybe I am. But I think that creating awareness around what are we really carrying every single day into us in these important conversations,
Yeah.
because our quota is not going to go down. I've never seen a quota go down. It's not going to change, and and expectations go up, but yet we carry all of this. So I know, personally speaking, I carried a lot of the fact that I was concealing the true self, my true concerns with me every day as an executive until 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I see younger people, or I see people, it doesn't matter if they're younger, older, in between, mid career, end of career. We tend to carry this emotion with us that we're not good enough, that we're not deserving, and it shows up in a scarcity mindset that says that, again, law of vibration, I'm emoting this energy unwillingly, unknowingly, because the last thing you would ever want to do is have this energy knowingly emit this energy to somebody else. That's completely counterproductive, but that's exactly what's happening.
Mm.
And so I would just encourage people to take stock of what they're bringing into that meeting on a day-to-day basis, and try to, through meditation, yoga, exercise, walking, being in nature, whatever mechanism that you can use to really unburden yourself, free yourself from tension, because when tension exists, the outcomes aren't going to align.
Yeah. If I'm a sales leader, how do I help my sales reps to get past that desperation uh, idea, or how do I best address that concept or
Now
that challenge?
this is going to be controversial. The
Oh snap!
first
Oh
things
snap!
first, don't have unrealistic expectations.
Huh?
Don't, and unrealistic quotas. That's number one. And because I've seen it time and time again. And then also creating an environment that's safe to learn and grow and develop.
Mm.
Those are, I mean, if we were just to start there, I think of what I see in a lot of its quarter to quarter results, moment to moment results. We have unrealistic quotas, and then we put a false sense of urgency next to those quotas. Then we don't create a safe environment to coach and develop people, and then we've just caved everybody in not intentionally, but just what happens. So we put so much pressure. So your top lines continue to eat. The middle group is probably somewhere in between, day to day, week to week. They feel great. They don't feel great.
Hmm.
But we got to create a safe environment of learning and education. And we don't spend nearly enough time, energy, or money on developing people.
Interesting. Lower that expectation, increase the opportunities in the long run, because you're in realistic quotas, being straightforward with that.
Well, I think so. I mean, if we have realistic quotas, because you think about this, I think about, again, tension in organizations, tension in sales organizations, tension with leaders. It creates this compounding ripple effect. So whether or not your team is telling you that you have unreasonable expectations or not competitive market pricing or not a competitive product, there's always whispers. And so you have to, as a sales leader, surface those tensions. And if you create a safe environment for your team to really discuss what the concerns and issues are, and you create a safe environment coaching your team so you can surface those issues as well, then I think you're in a much better position. And so the more you surface to the top, the more you're understanding what's necessary. So then as a leader, I'm like, okay, well, I've surfaced the tension. I created consistency of my message. So we're all unified on what we're trying to say, which takes brand and market to a whole nother level. Then I can align my team. And most importantly, I can start to influence the organization. But as a leader, I don't create a safe environment to get real feedback from my team. I'm not coaching and developing them. The tension mounts and mounts and mounts and mounts. And all of a sudden you're putting somebody on a performance plan
Yeah,
because you feel like you have to,
that pit.
because you know what I mean? Like you feel like you have to because they're underperforming, but maybe it's because the organization's not aligned.
Yeah.
So look, it's not, there's never one answer. And you're asking such great questions, Donald, but in totality, why don't we just start by removing some of the tension that exists? And
Yeah.
then we do that by resurfacing the tension that actually exists in organizations, not sweeping it under a rug.
I want to shift gear for a second to lack of skills. And I think this ties it transitioned well to where where we are. It could be the organization could be set up properly, and we could have the proper skill set, excuse me, the proper mechanism or system like we were talking about now in place, but still yet maybe there's still this scarcity versus abundance mentality, and the scarcity is winning. How can I now address skill set as a factor in this?
So if I think of scarcity versus abundance, and I think, okay, there's rational fear and there's irrational fear or concerns.
Mm,
So, I mean, irrational concern is I don't have the training and development I need or the skill.
yeah.
I mean, that's something we can assess as a sales leader. We're like, okay, this person, Donald misses this opportunity. He could improve here. That's a very rational thing for us to talk about. And we
Hmm.
can fix it relatively easily by putting in training or mentorship or guidance or coaching. The other side of the equation, though, is from a skill standpoint, sometimes the skill is irrational. So it may show up as, not particularly clear on the pitch, doesn't really understand our story, but it could be rooted in irrational fear around, vulnerabilities and otherwise that they maybe haven't exposed or haven't been revealed. And that's why I said earlier, like if you create a safe environment and you have real conversations with your team, and you're demonstrating a little bit of level of vulnerability, your team's demonstrating some vulnerability, you can start to surface, is the fear or the deficiency rational or irrational? If it's rational, it's easy to address. If it's irrational, it takes more of a velvet glove perhaps rather than the stick to solve the problem.
Yeah. Love it. The leaders, I had a note for this part: coaching to a consistent standard. How can that help us?
I think everybody, if you have expectations of what good looks like,
Yeah.
and then so everybody understands what it is. I call it creating an ideal scene. So for instance, if our sales team got together and we did a headline exercise that said 5 years from now, the Wall Street Journal is going to write an article about us, what are they going to say?
Mm,
Which is a fun exercise to do, by the way. It's a lot of fun because you start to unlock creativity in your group. And if you're unlocking creativity, they don't have cortisol. So then you start to elevate the conversation around the whole concept of vibration. So if start there. And then say, okay, in order to reach that, what are the steps that we have to take in order to get there? And from those conversations with your team, a few things happen. One is you start to understand what the standard is. The standard becomes the standard. Because in order to reach your headline goal, your ideal scene from 5 years from now, oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes you have to elevate the standard. Well, what's the new standard look like? What's it feel like? And then you get buy-in because everybody worked together to create the ideal scene. Now we have the standard in place. And then when people fall below the standard, and here's the beautiful part about it, Donald, I don't have to coach them as a leader. Everybody else is. They're starting to self coach one another. And so rather than relying on one or two people to be your, the individuals in waiting or your high potential talent or whatever it might be, when everybody understands the talent, then everybody starts to buy in. You've multiplied yourself as a coach.
Yeah.
And this happened to me. The first time this happened to me, I was early in my career as a manager. I hired a guy. It was one of the best hires I've ever made, but I understood what made him tick. And what made him tick was that he was basically raised himself, excuse me, because his mom and dad were separated. Mom was in one city with a new relationship, and the dad was in another city. And he literally raised himself. And I knew that his work ethic, his awareness, and all that who he had become was so powerful that I knew if I got that guy into my organization, that became our organization, people would see one of two things. They'll see one, his work ethic, his determination, who he is as a human being. And they would see that what quality of the standard just went up because of this person coming into our organization. And it's exactly what happened. All of a sudden, the bar got raised. Everybody knew the standard, and everybody started coaching each other. It was amazing.
Absolutely love that story there. Well, self-actualization, this was something that was alluded to, but can you talk to us more about self-actualization in this scarcity versus abundance mindset?
It speaks to really our own individual awareness about what our challenges are.
Mm.
And so I'll pull myself back into the conversation when I share with you. I knew for years, based upon my first panic attack when I was 19, all the way through until 2 years ago, I knew that I was carrying this weight and burden that really wasn't necessary to carry. Now, it took me 30 plus years in corporate America to figure out that I could have relieved a lot of that tension just by doing the work on myself. So it starts with us. Now, again, it worked out fairly well for me, but in the spirit that it didn't work out well for me is because I really truly didn't find happiness in myself until 2 years ago. And so in hindsight, I wish I would have done the work earlier, which is why I'm sharing this message now, is if you do the work on yourself, you find out, am I in alignment? Am I in alignment with the work that I'm doing, the organization I'm a part of? Does the organization share my values and my perspective? Do I have my values determined? Do I know what my core values are? And do I represent them on a daily basis? But getting an alignment and having this self-actualization experience is really important. Am I built to be a salesperson? Or maybe am I more of a relationship manager? And I felt like I found my way into sales because after all, you can make more money if you kind of eat what you kill, so to speak. So I think everyone needs to do work on themselves if they're in a spot of underperformance, or if they're not necessarily meeting their own expectations of what's holding me back, like truly, truly what's holding me back. And then start to take incremental baby steps to improve that. You don't need to go from 0 to 100, but what's that next best action I can take through the course of the first week, the second week, the third week, to start to feel better about who I am, where I am, and get alignment. Because if I'm in alignment, goes back to where we started the conversation, Donald. If I'm in alignment with who I am, then the law of vibration says I'm bringing that energy into the room, not the energy of somebody I don't like. Being myself.
I couldn't agree with you more on that, about being yourself. Like I think it's powerful. So there's a lot that goes on with this, and I think this conversation is just barely even getting started. I think there's so much more. And what I love about you is that you have a lot more details on this. But if we were to review our convo so far, it was one, desperation drives scarcity. Two, we need to, as a leaders, we need to set up that organization. We need to set up our standards, so to speak. Maybe quota is not right, or whatnot. Get the right people with the right skills. Lack of skill could be an important factor there, and team members can help with that. And proper coaching can help teams to perform. And then understanding how self actualization actually impact us, and just being truthful to ourselves. I think all of that comes back to help us as sales professionals. Sales, I feel, and many other professions feel this way, I imagine, but sales specifically, I feel, is one of those places where you are, it's a lot of mental work.
Yeah.
And and I'm interacting with people, and that vibration, so to speak, that energy that I'm bringing can easily be picked up. I had a sales leader that used to say that, your fears like Doberman, your prospects are like Doberman. They could pick up on that fear. And I
Yes.
think what he's really getting back at is this level of that
Yeah.
vibration. What energy am I bringing into that conversation? Because even if you don't know what it is, you feel something that it's off. And then you're probably not going to be excited for that convo.
I think you recapped it beautifully, Donald. The message I want everyone to take away from, if they forget all the details, the message I want them to take away from our conversation today is that you have to churn toward the tension,
Mm.
whatever that tension is. If it's a sales leader, is the organization aligned? Have I surfaced all the tension? Do I have a unifying message? Is my team aligned? And am I influencing the organization in a way? Because oftentimes I like to say we're both the tip of the spear and we're the archer as a sales organization. Like you have both, or you're the puppet and you're the puppet master. The organization relies on us as salespeople and sales leaders disproportionately in a good way, not in a
Yeah.
negative way. But the sales organization tends to take the brunt of most underperformance issues in a company. And so it's incumbent upon the leader to make sure that there's alignment, that the organization's congruent. And I think a lot of the challenges that I've seen in my career where I step into an organization, it's oftentimes out of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And we really haven't done the work to churn toward the tension. We haven't surfaced the tension. We don't know what it is. We haven't addressed it. And we haven't aligned the organization in totality around the sales team.
Yeah.
And so when a sign of a great and influential leader is when the organization starts to see how powerful his or her team is. That's really not, I got to take care of my team, and which is obviously a core tenet of a good leader, but the rest of the organization sees how special your team is.
Yeah.
And that suggests to me that you're influencing at a level that's necessary and putting your people in a better position to be successful.
Yeah.
But yeah, turn toward the tension. If no one remembers a thing from our conversation, I hope that's what they remember.
Well, if folks want to get in touch with you, Scott, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So thescottramey.com or the Scott Ramey, if we want to use Queen's English, and then LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. That's kind of where I spend most of my time. I'm on the other social platforms, but LinkedIn, and it's RAM as in Mary EY.
Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today. I appreciate it, man.
Donald, thanks for having me. It was such a pleasure.
That was Scott Ramey, and as I told you, it was going to be fire, and it was fire. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. Tell him that you heard him here on the Sales Evangelist podcast, and I will, I'll be really grateful for that. I know he's going to be really excited, and I know he's going to be pumped that you were able to get so much from the episode. For me, the biggest component that I took, like what he shared there, the last little piece, man. There's so many different nuggets, but let's actually back up. One of the other nuggets that was more that got me was that how the leader plays a critical part in this process. It's not just the individual rep. And sometimes the quota may just be too high, and I know it may be blasphemous, as he said, and people might get not like that, unpopular opinion. But if I can get my seller to perform at a maximum, at a level that's going to be great, obviously I'm going to challenge them, and they're going to improve over and over. But if I can get the performance, that's going to be better and help that person to come with the right mindset every single time. But it's a fun thing. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Tell him what you enjoyed the most. If you'd like to learn more about being a part of a mastermind where sellers come together and get help and guidance, check out our sales mastermind. Go to thesalesevangelist.com/mastermind. Can't wait to have you. As always, I want you to thrive. I want you to succeed. I want you to raise your level of thinking. But most importantly, I want you to go out and do big things. See you on the next one.